You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Great to be with you again on Locked On Texas Tech on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, always free and available on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts. With the only Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us for this reaction edition of the program as we are coming to you on the heels of Texas Tech's second Big 12 win of the season. They start out 2-0 in league play for the first time in over a decade, following a thrilling 44-41 win over the Bearcats of Cincinnati. And a whole lot to digest from this one, Chris. And I have a feeling that we may be in these types of conversations still many times over as we run through Big 12 play, as it seems like the margin between most of these teams is not going to be very wide. So there will be highs, there will be lows, there will be moments in between, and you're just hoping that you survive it at the end of the day, which is what Texas Tech did on Saturday night from Jones Stadium. So tooth and nail, hook or crook, whatever it takes, I guess, to get it done is what you're glad to see play out as the Red Raiders improve to 4-1 and keep some good vibes going in Jones Stadium under Joey McGuire. So it was a fun ball game, and of course made most fun by the final result.
A lot going on there at the Jones on a Saturday night for sure. You remember back in the summer, I took issue with people that kind of had suggested that you had an easy schedule or an easy schedule at the start. I think I preferred the term favorable just because you were front loaded at home. And I come away from these last 2 weeks saying, yeah, it wasn't easy because it just wasn't. Favorable because you were at home. Yeah. I think Arizona State and Cincinnati in the last 2 weeks have, earned some respect from me. With some of the pieces and just how difficult it was to put them away and to beat them. I think some of these teams are going to have, have some success going forward if they can stay healthy with some of the pieces that I'm talking about. I'm like, you got any more of them Dante Corleones laying around? Anybody? There was some dudes on the field last night for Cincy, man, and I thought Sorsby played great. I thought Joe Royer played great. Their tight end, I thought Henderson, their wideout, played really good. You caught a break with some of the running backs going down, and I say plural. And thankfully, you have a really good running back and a really good wideout and a really good quarterback that's playing very efficient. But it was stressful, man. And I mean, down 14-3 to up 41-27, and then just I am standing 5 feet away from Debbie McGuire when that kick goes up in the air and she can't watch. It's just like a lot. I was down there. I think Robert Giovanetti was right next to me, and we're just on that end of the field. And yeah, and luckily it's not a win or lose off of that play, even if they make it. It's just tie, go to overtime, which you would have felt like, oh gosh, dang. But you did win it because it misses. But it's just what an unbelievable atmosphere, man. I think Tech does a phenomenal job. I may be on a podcast with somebody that has a lot to do with that, but it's talking about you. But I just think all the bells and whistles that were going on, the lights going on and off, the music, my favorite PA announcer, the pyro, I think Cincinnati came away very impressed with it too. They handled it with complete class after the game. I listened to everything that they had to say and talked about how fun it was to play in an environment like that. And those night games in the fall that are meaningful, and sometimes you haven't had, enough of those in recent years. Those are fun, especially when you come out on the right side of it. And you just can't, people can get into the beauty contest all you want. And if you want, that's great. And we'll talk about it and we will get into some of that. But if you're just frustrated after a win, I can't help those those folks. And I love them equally, but they're just not all going to be, again, Picassos, man. They're just not.
every week is unique unto itself. I don't know.
Yep.
We have to continue to drive that home unless you are one of the nation's very, very best or very, very worst. 85, 90% of college football teams there in that gooey middle are going to have a unique Saturday just about every time around. We hope that they are similar in that the final result means a win for the good guys, but you never know what the game is going to call for. So after 30-22, following 66-21, now you get 44-41, and it just, I guess one thing that was similar is that just about every phase of the game was called upon for Texas Tech at one point or another to contribute in order to get this win, whether it was obviously offensively. Special teams impact continues to be huge for Texas Tech as far as our carousel of kickers is concerned, and I'm just still blown away at the guts and the nails that they show to be able to be engaged in something like that and still be successful. And then even though the defense was backpedaling most of the night, there wasn't a whole lot of defense for either team in this ball game. You maybe make the biggest defensive play of the night in A.J. McCarty's pick six, which is one of those things you can pinpoint as a difference maker for the Red Raiders. And by the way, before I forget, shout out to the First Lady of Texas Tech football, Debbie McGuire, who I saw in a picture post-game, and I think like her purse strap had it slightly concealed, but I swear she was wearing a button that said "run the damn ball." And I don't know if I've ever seen that from a head coach's wife before, but you were speaking our language, Mrs. McGuire. So I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget that.
And they did. They handed it to the bell cow
did.
32 times. I mean, which is for college game. You only had 65 plays on offense, Calvin. I mean, that's abnormally low for a game that felt like it was, but you only ran 65 offensive plays, and 32 of those were handed to your bell cow senior running back. And they, and he was performed admirably against what I thought was a pretty good group up front. I mean, like I said, Corleone, Collins. I mean, there's some of those pieces that they had up front. Not easy at all, but yeah, she's a lot more old school and a lot harder on Joey than any fan can be. I can assure you. And people may we're laughing about it. I'm being 1,000% serious when I say that. She is a one of a kind, a phenomenal human. I will also say I was also standing next to Debbie and Joey's daughter and their son-in-law, Joe. Joe in from New York. Joe listens to our show repeatedly and phenomenal dude who I love cutting up with on the sideline whenever he's able to come in town. And we've talked about him before on the games, but he's a big MMA guy, but he's now an adopted college football fan, and he's knee deep in the family now. So I guess we were talking about Dante Corleone. I guess I could use a Godfather reference there. You
don't ever go against the family.
That's right. And they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. Yeah. Wow, a lot going on there, man. I just did not, when you're at 41-27, Calvin, I just did not think you would be sweating out an attempt on the last play of the game, whether you were going to win or lose this game. But that's the frustrating part about this league. The beautiful thing about this league is you're right, man. 80 to 90%, I think, to use your math there, is the peanut butter and jelly in between the slices of bread there. And everybody, it's a week-to-week sport. And I think we're seeing the league. I mean, you see what I sent you earlier this morning on you are one of 7 teams in the country from Power 4 leagues that are 2-0 in your league right now. And Colorado, BYU, and Texas Tech are amongst 3 of the 7, just like everybody had thought. And there's some 1-0 teams in the country in their league, but there's, you're kind of, and again, you've had 2 home games. These are games you probably should have won. You did. But now it's time to, take the show on the road a little bit, because next 3 out of your next 4, I think, are on the road. But a lot to still go over on this win over the Bearcats.
I want to get some of these individual difference makers coming up in just a moment, but one of the biggest stories going into the game. First, Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. And NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Say you're watching the game, you get hit with a hunch, an instinctual calling. Well, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you're going to place your bets to keep up with everything going down in real time as you submit that slip. And right now, FanDuel is going to get you started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with only a $5 bet out the gate at FanDuel.com. I want to get some of these individual difference makers coming up in just a moment, but one of the biggest stories going into the game that we anticipated last week was some shuffle up front along the offensive line, and you kind of pair that with what I don't really think there's any doubt about being the best defensive front that they have faced so far this season. So I don't know if the shuffle made it, a lot prettier because of what you were facing across the line of scrimmage, but I do feel like you were in a better spot this week than you were the week prior against Arizona State. Again, maybe that margin is very thin, and I'll credit Cincinnati for having a lot to do with that. But what did you think about the change we saw and how it impacted the game? If you weren't following it along that closely, we saw Merriman, Porche, Wilson, Carter, and Rogers left to right. Obviously, you put 172 up on the ground for Taj Brooks. You go for 231 overall, sack adjusted 231, so not a big difference there. We saw Baron Morton actually get loose a couple of times for some big gains on the ground. But what did you think the impact was of that offensive line shuffle, and how did you think they fared against a pretty salty defensive front?
Yeah, I think the last 2 weeks you've seen the best defensive fronts to this point. I think that Arizona State and Cincinnati were both better, like up front, than Washington State was, and I think maybe Cincinnati had better individual pieces, but don't forget how good that Arizona State group was. They may not have anybody that's like Corleone or Collins or anything like that, but and Taj has gone for over 100 against both of these defenses. Yeah. But I think this clearly seemed to work. I still think you have your tight ends heavily involved in the run game. I mean, tight end Mason Tharp plays more snaps than any of the other tight ends by far. He's so heavily involved in the run game that, again, I point to him being most valuable, most important, most, glue guy, whatever you want to do. We need to continue to mention him because you're continuing to scheme some of these things up. And then credit to Mr. Brooks too for his patience. I think Corleone and Scott Satterfield said it after the game on just they never seen a back that was as patient as he was. And there, you want to take out a few of the no gain or negative runs and things like that. But yeah, this was where it's frustrating though, is that there's sometimes when you want to be able to run it and everybody should know that you're about to do it and you can't get it done. That's what is still, there's a couple of the goal line calls where you poke it in, but then there's some where you just, or short yardage, like fourth down, where it's just, man, we just can't move people or we can't get it done. But overall, hard to have too much issue there. And I would say that I hate it for like Ty Buchanan because he's the one that kind of got squeezed out of this deal. But I would sure bet that this may be what you at least kind of roll with based on what you just did versus the Bearcats. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into that a little bit further with you on tomorrow's episode as far as what they anticipate moving forward. I thought they fought their butts off. It's not perfect, obviously. But, man, couldn't have been any more impressed with some of those guys that were as advertised up front for Cincinnati. Baron Morton's night, I thought maybe was one of his best individual efforts that we've seen from him as a starter for the Red Raiders. And, man, there were some scraps left on the plate, too, because there were some drops here or there that really could have been big gains. And some of those put on the money. There was a high point opportunity for Caleb Douglas he doesn't bring in. There was a pass over the middle that hits Koyakin, right in the bread basket.
Those are on the same drive.
Were they on the same drive? I don't even know if I realized that.
And then that's the same drive. And if you remember on the third down play, they throw Cam Dickey's just standing out there by himself, and he just drops it. All three of those that you just mentioned on the same drive. The only misfire that Barron maybe had was on the very first drive to Coy Aiken when he probably didn't put enough air under the ball or lead him enough, and it was a bit underthrown because you'd run Taj like 4 times for like 30-plus yards, and then here comes the play action, and otherwise the place is going nuts if Barron makes a throw. That's really the only, I thought, poor throw that he had, and it was just slightly underthrown. But there's a lot of drops here, and I hope people remember that. And it's just part of football. It's what's going to happen. It's why some coaches used to say, when you drop back and throw it, there's two of the 3 things that can happen, are bad. So we're gonna run it. We're gonna wear the button that says "Run the damn ball" on our purse strap for the coach's wife. You get what I'm saying? So, yeah. But what I see Barron now doing though is that he continues. He stays in the pocket. He's not getting flushed as quick, and he's taking a few shots because he's trying to hang in there. And some of these throws are paying off. You just hope he stays okay. He ran the option. He ran the zone read and pulled it. That you mentioned some of the rushing stuff. But I mean, knock on wood, but he just keeps taking care of the football because now it's a 7-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio so far this season. And I think that's very impressive. You can win this way, especially so on the road, and you're going to have to. You just can't go on the road and turn it over. Ask Brennan Sorsby how that worked out, because I mean he loved to have that one throwback, and he just made the one poor mistake, and that was enough. That and your kickers are better than theirs, which certainly helps. But yeah, I was very impressed by Barron. He's really growing into the maturity of the position and all that it takes.
Yeah, no doubt. And some of those pass catchers have got to be on the difference maker list. Josh Kelly has another huge night. Coy Aiken just casually goes for 2 touchdowns on 3 catches. A couple of big plays mixed in there for him as well. But I thought it was kind of interesting to see maybe Kelly not get off to as fast of a start as we had seen in some previous weeks, but then eventually really came on and was making some big plays for the Red Raiders, which I think shows some mental toughness. How many times over the years you think about a wide receiver here or there, and you're like, well, you got to get him engaged early to get him going, which is always a great idea if you can do it. But it always kind of irritated me to think that some guys like, well, I didn't get going early, so why would you expect me to get going late? And it wasn't like Kelly was a total no-show early on, but really as the game went on was when he started to make a huge impact and winds up with 111 yards on 8 catches. So really was glad to see what some of those pass catchers were able to do.
Yeah, the only issue I had with Josh Kelly in this game is I wish he would have channeled his inner Adrian Fry and just fair caught that punt instead of trying to get 5 to 7 yards and then putting the ball on the turf. Yeah. But as a receiver, yeah, I mean, because we say this all the time, but it just I hope people hear it in that consistency is the hardest thing, like consistently good. And he produces every single week. 8 catches, over 100 yards. He didn't get in the end zone, so you may not pay attention to him as much because some of his catches weren't as loud as maybe Coy Aiken's were. But he bails you out. He's consistent. And same with Taj, though. I mean, that's the thing is like that's why those guys are talked about like they are, because they do it every week and do it really well every week. And I think I know Coy and Caleb would love to have a few of those back on the drops, but I think Coy continues to show you that he is really, really good. This is a sophomore, folks. He's got a lot more football to play. He's going to continue to improve. Joey talks about how hard he plays. I like the ways that you got Dre McCray involved a little bit. I thought you continue to kind of show some different wrinkles with Jalen Conyers, which I'm a fan of. The Wildcat, the shovel pass, doing some different things. I think they will continue to play off of some of this stuff with some different variations with him as like I guess what I just keep saying is like the ultimate gadget player. And I don't know, am I allowed to mention some defensive difference makers, or are we just staying on offense here?
No, I think we should. But before we get to that, I think you told me 7 of 9 possessions offensively you get points on. And it's hard to turn your nose up at that, right? I mean, I know that it was tough sledding in some of those instances, but they find a way to get it done.
Yeah, the only issue I have offensively is that
First, today's episode brought to you by Gametime. Never sweat buying tickets to your favorite event again with Gametime. It's always a breeze using the Gametime app where you're going to find the best last minute deals. And I love being able to scout out a view from any seat before pulling the trigger. Of course, you're always doing it at the lowest price guaranteed. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it begins, which means you can finish off that final brat, that final beer at your own pace at the tailgate, because Gametime is the place to find last minute seats to any event. Gametime gives you the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets, but not just fast, also secure and simple to use. So right now, download the Gametime app and create an account and use our promo code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, create an account and redeem our code Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today for last-minute tickets at the lowest price, guaranteed.
the only issue I have offensively is that you can't. You have the 3 drops on the one drive late in the third, and so you having to settle for 3. You miss the play action shot to Aiken in the first drive of the game, end up having to settle for 3. You get first and goal at the 5 at some point in the fourth, and they thought you thought you'd get them with Barron pulling it and walking into the end zone like you did against North Texas, and they had it sniffed out. You go with a jet sweep with Dre McCray, and anyway, you have to settle for 3. Those are if you dig in, those are really the issues you have but it's like you score 44 points and against the defense that just shut somebody out the week before and has been really good so far this year with this new Iowa State scheme. And you score 7 of the 9 times you have it on only 65 plays. Yeah, it's hard for me to, and I know it's like the easy thing or low hanging fruit to like point at every single play call. But I just remember last year, you're not giving it to. Why are you scared to run the ball and give it to? I just don't know. You can't hand it to him more than 32 times. Like, you're just trying to kill the kid. You're trying to absolutely kill him, and you're manufacturing rushing yards without using him via Conyers or via your quarterback or whatever. And sometimes your receivers, didn't help you a bit. But yeah, it was just efficient, and it was enough. But yeah, 41-27 should be, I would have thought, enough for you to kind of hold on. But again, so you got bogged down a few of those drives and had to settle for 3. And thankfully, you did get to settle for 3 in that your kicker made his, or your kickers made theirs, I should say.
Right.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of things, obviously was not a defensive coordinator's dream statistically at the end of the day. But there were some guys that were getting plenty busy, man. Ben Roberts, Jacob Rodriguez. Roberts, of course, your leading tackler, but also had the huge pressure that resulted in the pick 6 for A.J. McCarty. And, man, I was digging me some DB Carroll on Saturday night as he had a stretch where he was all over the field, which is not easy to do for a man of his size. But I thought really maybe had his best game as a Red Raider overall. I know some of those guys were standing out to you, but those and some others, who's on your list?
Yeah, I think Ben should lead that list, but I thought you mentioned DB Carroll, and I think we got to finally call A.J. McCarty's name, and he got to put on the big title belt on the sideline after the pick 6. I don't know what, trivia question that, will be asked one day at somebody in a sports bar. Hey, name me 2 guys that's had a pick 6 in Jones Stadium, one for the visitor and one for the home team. But A.J. McCarty is that answer, folks. He blackouts. He just pick 6s the ball. I mean, so whether he's on the visitor team or the home team, but that was really fun. I think your DBs are just have their head spinning a little bit. They're scratching, they're clawing. There's some shuffling going on. We'll get into that, later on in the week. But individually, yeah, I think we've kind of called out a few guys, and it takes an army, it takes a village, it takes, and all 3 phases of this game. You had to have plays being made by all 3 phases. Complementary football, call it what you will, but you needed a bit of everybody to get it done. And that's the way it's going to be. you're simply not good enough, and nor do I think really anybody in the league is good enough to just kind of roll it out there and play, just say, hey, we're gonna do this on our terms, and we've got such a great this aspect of our team that we can just roll. And I don't see that. And injuries are going to continue to factor in throughout the league race, but you need a little bit of everything, against the Bearcats, and you got it.
Well, and again, it's just one of those circumstances where you got to have a little metal to you. You got to dig down deep. You got to have some toughness. You got to have some perseverance. I mean, 14-3 early on. Some other iterations of Texas Tech football certainly would have been expected to pack it in, but not the Joey McGuire era iteration of Texas Tech football. You sent this to me after the game last night, kicked it out to the Matador Mob insiders. 5-1 in your last 6 Big 12 games. That's a lot of fun. But what does it say to you that all 5 of those wins were one-score games, and you said a combined margin of victory of only 22 points? I mean, and you're, like we said at the beginning of the show, you're going to be in a lot of these. I mean, that's the way that the Big 12 Conference is going to be, I think. And I think you've proven yourself as a pretty tough team between the years, or as far as some of the intangibles are concerned, when it comes to these situations. And I think we're far enough into this era to understand that it's not really a fluke. It is a trait. It's a characteristic, and that's a good thing to have.
Yeah, you were 4-0 in one-score games in year one under Joey, and then last year you start out the season, it's like the Wyoming, Oregon, West Virginia, and then you think, well, I guess the one-score win thing is over with. We're never going to win one of these again. And then you what was it? Let's see, TCU, UCF, Kansas on the road, and then you carry it into this year with Arizona State and now Cincinnati, and that's kind of the league that you're in, and everybody's similar, and it kind of one penalty, one call, one drop, one missed kick, whatever, it kind of is deciding these things, and that's why you have to. But Joey continues to use like the boxing analogies with me. He's a big boxing fan and MMA stuff too. But we talked on his show the other night. He made his team, and I would encourage people to go Google this. I think it was 1985. Thomas Hitman Hearns and Marvin Hagler had what many thought was the greatest round of boxing in history. It was round 1 in 1985. Google it; it'll pop right up. And they are just going at it in this one round, and it's just like, dude, how are they supposed to continue now? Because they're just like empty their bucket, And Joey has shown this to his team, and it's like neither guy. He's also had some other fights where it's like a guy gets knocked down a couple times in a round and then comes back and wins. So that's kind of the mentality he's trying to get his team to understand. You're going to get punched. It's going to hurt. You're going to deal with some serious adversity. You may get knocked down, but just keep getting up, keep throwing punches. That's why I love the big title belt that went over AJ McCarty's shoulder. He's walking around like he's the champ. On the sideline or whatever, and you can pick 6 your way to a world heavyweight championship in my book all you want,
That's
Mr.
right.
McCarty. But the one-score thing, you're right. It's whoever's best at that is gonna continue to emerge as a contender. And if you're not good at it, it's the exact opposite, because you're going to be in a lot of these games.
And we've been there, by the way.
Sure.
On the opposite end of the spectrum.
Because Jack Anderson, I don't know if you remember him as an offensive lineman, played for the Giants and Eagles.
I saw the tweet.
Yeah. And he was like, we would have lost this years ago. And, and I think there was a belief at the time that you were going to lose it. And then now there's a belief now that you're going to win it. And I think that is culture. It's boxing analogies. It's past success or past failures. It's all the stuff. And I think right now there's a sense of we're good. Keep swinging. 1 foot in the tire, as he's talked about in Creed 2, and don't, get in there. I mean, he told me the other day, he's like, man, my dad taught me that if you're going to fight somebody, the guy that's trying to take his shirt off and running his mouth and all that, he's just basically trying to talk his way into changing his mind. But he goes, walk right up and you just pop him right in the mouth. And that's what I'm trying to teach my kids to do. Not theoretically, but you get what I'm saying. It's an analogy, people.
Right.
So,
well, when somebody's taking their shirt off before a fight, that's the perfect time to hit them square in the nose. And I've seen it play out that way before. Typically a very successful move. There's nothing that's changed in this regard from a football standpoint, Chris. There is adversity that's going to be there every week. And there are a couple of things related to it that pretty much determine your fate. How much are you creating for yourself? How much is created by the opposition? And how are you responding to the adversity? Every football team in America, even the best of the best, have got to deal with that. So, and that's a throwback, I think, to the Leach era as well, where you always felt like as a fan, like, we may be down. I'm not so sure we're out. And more often than not, it proved that you are not out. So that's one great thing to see restored to this program. Appreciate a little extra time for a reaction episode here today. Coming up on the next episode of Locked On Texas Tech, we'll get a little bit further into what to anticipate as we now move forward for a trip away from Jones Stadium. Are we expecting to see some things shake out similarly along the offensive line? And what is going on in the secondary, as it is the Wounded Warrior department right now, with some safeties now added to the list, in addition to a pair of cornerbacks that were not available on Saturday either. So a whole lot to consider there. And also considering the future path for Texas Tech, as the difficulty level will be increasing incrementally, or exponentially, I should say, as we roll into these next few weeks. But as for now, savoring this flavor as you get off to a 2-0 start in Big 12 play for the first time since 2013. And I think I saw the last maybe 4 or 5 times that you had gotten off to a 2-0 start, you had won at least 8 games in every one of those seasons, which I think would be a very good season for Texas Tech if you were able to do that. We've all got high hopes. I understand that. And certainly the coach and the program, chief amongst us with those high hopes. If you're thinking about style points today, congratulations to you on being a Georgia or an Alabama fan. Must be an enchanted life. But as for the rest of us Red Raiders, just going to enjoy another wire or a high wire type of win as you find your way to balance yourself out to a 4-1 mark out of the gates. Chris, enjoyed the conversation as always, man, and we'll see you for the next one.
Was a pleasure as always, especially after a dub, man. I think I saw those guys running the camera, W, and eating it up. Like, give me that dub. I'll eat it up. I
love that that's become a thing now.
I know. Yeah. Num, 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 num. Yeah. So.
All right. Appreciate everybody's time out there. Thank you again to the Matador Mob for mixing it up with us on game day and beyond. It is your direct line to Chris and myself anytime on any subject. We actually have a wildlife expert now in the mix, Chris, who was wanting to correct us some of our Bearcat inaccuracies. We look to be entertaining, if not always factual. So appreciate you for being out there, and maybe you can straighten us out on some of that. If you want to become a Matador Mob insider, check the show notes on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts for the link there, and you can try on a free 14-day trial to see how it suits you. Thanks for the time. Get subscribed on YouTube or anywhere you get podcasts as well, so you never miss an episode. And a big shout out to the everydayers out there, always mixing it up with us in the YouTube comments section. For Chris, I'm Casey, and we hope to see you back for the next round on Locked On Texas Tech.